SaaS needs to die, and people need to become their own service and SaaS providers. And that's one of the things that we're cooking with. Our mission is to give everybody a home on the internet. To have a home, you have to have like real property on the internet. You have to be a landowner. And right now, none of us own land. None of us own servers of our own. But when you have a server, you can just host anything you want. You can build whatever you want, and you can communicate directly with other servers on the internet. If I want to like share a file with you, there doesn't have to be a middleman inside. Well, there doesn't have to be like Dropbox or like whatever. My server can just send it directly to your server. That's how the internet used to work.
Personal agents, how are you thinking about that?
I think when it comes to like working with agents, it has to be 12 a.m. to 12 a.m., 7 days a week. Your agents have to be running at that rate to really like token max. Obviously, you don't have to be there all the time, and it's all about setting up the system so you don't have to be there, and you can still have work-life balance.
Dude, so you went viral for basically having a $9,000 cursor bill.
Yeah.
And I think that there's like a lot of debate online and like tech communities and stuff like that around like huge AI bills versus not.
So for me, it's all about like,
Ben, thank you for coming on another podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I love that you're like, I know you're really AI pilled because you're just like zinned up.
That's right. Every day. Yeah. Especially with Fable, I'm like locked in these days. I gotta like get amped so I can like lock in and use Fable later.
Is Fable your favorite model right now, or favorite application?
It feels like the 4.5 moment to me. It's like another, just like transition point. It's been sick.
Okay, I gotta go like dig in and crack it out.
Definitely.
So my first question for you is like, I think what you're building is so incredibly interesting because you sort of discovered that, or you've always felt that you never had property on the internet.
Yeah.
And I think you've been around a tech for a long time. Like my first computer was an Apple II. Like I felt like there used to be so much like ownership in tech when you're like building your computer or like building programs and stuff like that. And then when the internet happened, it really feels like big tech has taken away a lot of ownership and we're like giving up our data and renting it all. Like, can you tell me a bit about like what online ownership is to you and what you're up to? Because it's so cool.
The root of everything is to like really save the internet. Like that's why I'm here. That's why I'm building, you know. I worked at Stripe for like 8.5 years, so like I'm fine, you know. But I just feel this like deep sense of dissatisfaction with like my tools and just the way the internet works compared to like what it was before. And that's kind of why we're building Zoe.
What was the internet before to you?
You know, I was on GeoCities, I was on MySpace. I got started like, you know, similar to you pretty early before it all happened. I was just like, you know, making little things on my computer, like using Mac Paint when I was a kid. I just like saw that the computer is this like amazing tool. You can like kind of discover and express and create anything. And like the internet was like so handmade and like personal before. And I miss that. I miss like, you know, MySpace pages. I miss like customizing the shit out of like my Winamp skin. Yeah. And like, you can't really do that with your tools anymore, or like on the internet it's like so uniform and like boring. And like I think like there aren't any like places on the internet anymore. It used to be like a place to like congregate and like meet people, and it was like it felt like a real place. But now the internet feels like a mall. It's terrible.
Yeah, it feels like an airport mall.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like the exact same thing, and like no one's really shopping and things. Have you heard about the dead internet theory?
Totally. Yeah, I'm all about that. Yeah.
So you think Reddit's like mostly fake or bots?
Yeah, I mean it's in the stats too. Like I read that past year, like only 33% of people on social media like actively post stuff, and the rest of people are just like consuming like mindlessly. And it wasn't meant to be that way.
No.
Like, people are just like overwhelmed by like all of this content and slop.
I guess from your view, like AI is definitely like accelerating the slop,
Totally.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, just look at Twitter. Like my timeline is like full of slop, and it's like so much worse quality content. It's just like low calorie shit that I like have to read now, and like I have to parse through all this slop to figure out like the signal from the noise.
Do you remember forums in like 2002?
Absolutely.
They were like so lit.
Yeah.
Like you could find ones on gaming, you could do all this stuff, and like like I don't know, like I was big into Counter-Strike and stuff like that, and I actually developed like I don't know who they are, but they were like homies like online that were like doing Counter-Strike and doing that kind of stuff.
I miss that. I miss homies on the internet. Where do they go? How do I find them?
And even like I like how you brought up MySpace. Like it taught us all to like code HTML to just design stuff, which is actually like low-key pretty smart.
Totally. And like, we can't customize the way our like, you know, Instagram looks anymore. We can't customize anything. They just give us these like little pieces that we can customize. And
From your view, do you think this is either the tech cycle that's done that, or do you think it was the personalities and the leadership at the time that have driven that, or both?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's been happening for a long time, and it's like really just market forces that drive it. It's like if you look at the beginning of the internet, like we didn't have all of these like standards, like navigation bars and all these links and like SEO. And SEO like really like changed things in a lot of ways, like just like ads and like the, if you look at like the recipe website example, like that was a very early example of slop. Like it went from like actually being able to like find a nice recipe written by a real human to like you have to read like a fucking like essay about their whole life to get to the recipe.
A fakely written essay.
Exactly.
Now it's like an AI slop recipe.
Exactly.
I actually feel like it's almost like osmosis out of the company or out of the internet into the world now. So like now when people are engaging with me in real life, like emails I get, right? Or like even calls now, all this stuff, it's like synthetic and I can tell it's synthetic.
Totally.
And I'm like, just write some like authenticity.
That's
so
horrible.
I was like coaching my, like one of my family members, or actually two of them, are recently grads out of college, and I was kind of like coaching them on job and getting like informational interviews and all of that stuff, because recent grads are having a hard time breaking through the jobs, and like some of that's a slop issue. And they came back with like emails, and they were like, I could just tell they were AI written, and they were like, they were thoughtful and well, but I was just like, it's so obvious to me. It's like, this is not actually something that's like unique or funny that's gonna like stop the reader. And I think like good content is just like much in need.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah. And I think the kids these days, they are dangerously brain rotted. And part of it is like just this feeling that like there's this like scarcity out there, and you have to always be like figuring out how to use agents to be more productive and like, send good emails and like, overwhelm like the other side, which also has bots like reviewing your like emails or like, your job applications. But people don't see that like the way to stand out now is like anti-slop. And it's like, human thinking. That's always been the root of like good content. It's like it starts from like a good idea that comes from inside you.
Yeah. So how do you creating a personal space on the internet?
So Zoe is a new kind of computer. It's like a cloud computer. And basically our mission is to give everybody a home on the internet. And to have a home, you have to have like real property on the internet. You have to be a landowner. And right now, none of us own land. None of us own servers of our own. But when you have a server, you can just host anything you want. You can build whatever you want, and you can communicate directly with other servers on the internet. So like, if I want to like share a file with you, there doesn't have to be a middleman inside, like in the middle. There doesn't have to be like Dropbox or like whatever. My server can just send it directly to your server. That's how the internet used to work. We just like sent files from my computer to your computer, and it was so simple.
So are you building racks?
No, not yet. We're kind of this like multi-cloud abstraction over like various cloud providers like AWS, GCP, etc.
Is your end state you want to build like your own racks, your own servers, like sovereignty? Is that kind of the big move for you?
Eventually, if we make it, we will definitely try to like vertically integrate just to deliver like the best experience possible. If that involves like kind of racks or like working more closely with like cloud providers or like POPs, then sure. But main goal is like to make owning a server or owning kind of like cloud computing as a consumer like as easy as possible.
That's so cool. I know a lot of people saw OpenClaw came out, and then they started buying like it's actually really hard to buy a Mac Mini or a Mac Studio right now. And I was like actually kind of inspired by that, because I was like, okay, people are like buying hardware and like figuring shit out.
Totally.
And maybe they're giving all their API keys to something that they shouldn't, but like, did you view that as like a positive? And like how do you think about like having a physical thing to run your AI versus maybe having cloud, and like what's important for people out there that care about sovereignty?
Yeah, totally. So, OpenClaw was like very viral, and it is like, it's very tangible and cool to like own your own hardware. And I think that's like what brought people to OpenClaw. It's like, oh yeah, I can have like my own kind of like computer with my bot on it in my home. But it's actually really hard to set that up in a way that is like secure and also like exposed to the internet. Like if you want to like host stuff there or like access it like from outside of your home, that's actually quite tricky to set up properly if you don't know what you're doing. And it's actually much easier to like just make like a really nice kind of cloud server experience for people, I think. And that's why we're building Zoe.
I think that's really astute, because we were dealing with some of the supply chain or like the chain exploits and like Anthropic, and I think there was one in not Anthropic. There's one in Mistral and other stuff where it was like if you didn't know explicitly when to look and where to go, like you would have just thought you updated something and it would have just done it, and then someone would have just owned you. that's why, like, I don't know, like you're talking about the early days of the internet. It's like, I think it was also really easy to like get fucked with, right?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
And now it's like we have that emerging again, but like it's on like steroids.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's very scary. And yeah, like the benefit of using something like Zoho is like we manage the server for you. We like update it. We can like kind of monitor the supply chain. We can monitor like network egress and ingress. So yeah, we can keep it secure for you.
That's so cool. Like, I guess, what are your top like customers using Zoho for?
Yeah, tons of use cases. We are mostly B2C. So like we're targeting like individuals and they're building all sorts of things. A lot of them are kind of like SMB owners or like solopreneurs. There's this like Bareka restaurant owner in our area. Our office is in Bushwick and he just like came over, but he's obsessed with Zoho and he's like built this whole system to like manage his franchise. He's trying to franchise his restaurant now. And he basically, when you want to franchise a restaurant, you need to like kind of make like repeatable processes for like kind of the managers to like manage their employees, manage the recipes, manage like kind of like the supply chain. And he's trying to build it all on Zoho, and he's like built this like crazy like dashboard and all of these tools and skills, and it's incredible to see.
That's so sick.
Yeah,
that's really cool. Why do you think so many B2B AI companies are getting funded? And like that's what the news is. And like I had you on because like you're one of the few like consumer. I would argue that like Dario and Sam are also consumer AI founders too. But like outside of the two big models, like why do you think people aren't funding consumer AI? And like what do you see that they don't see?
Yeah, I mean, investors obviously are scared because it's hard to do a consumer product. It's like hard to break out.
It's very hard.
Yeah, there haven't been that many like successes in consumer AI over like the past few years as the AI cycle has been happening. And yeah, it's just, I think people are coming at it the wrong way when it comes to consumer. I think a lot of like AI tech is like not very human centric. Like they're all about like kind of like workflow bros, like automating stuff and replacing themselves, replacing people, replacing their employees. That's not the narrative you have to tell if you really want to go after consumer, I think.
No.
Yeah.
And actually, I think the cool, like, I've railed on this a ton. By the way, I'm stealing workflow blower, bro. Which I'm kind of a workflow blower, but like I think the foundational model companies have been saying we're going to eliminate all jobs, and we created a god and a server farm in Texas to do that.
Exactly.
And like they're less popular than like the Iranian government, and I'm like, you have to try to do that, and like. But I think the main reason they've done that is because they want their IPOs to be valued against all payroll, not software.
Yeah.
But what that's done is I think that's really harmed consumer perception because like as a kid playing with an Apple II, like I fucking love a supercomputer.
Yeah.
And like I use it for recipes. I use it to like have questions about my newborn daughter.
Yeah.
I have it like, you know, like plot travel for me.
Yeah.
I have it like give me feedback. Like there's all these incredible things that I think it's very cool from a consumer perspective that's just not being leveraged.
Totally.
And so do you think that there's going to be like a massive consumer wave when people like wake up that it's like not a job elimination thing, but it's actually like a humanity acceleration thing?
Exactly. Congrats, by the way, on your daughter.
Thank you.
But yes, I think like basically the computer has always been like the most powerful creative tool that humanity has ever invented, really. It's like been transformational. And we saw this with like the PC boom. Like basically like computers were only for enterprise before. Like they had mainframes and they used them for like business processes. And nobody believed that consumers needed this. People were like, you're insane. Like people don't need personal computers. That's crazy. It was the same way with the internet in the early days. But obviously it's become this like huge consumer thing. So I think like the market just generally moves towards kind of like consumers adopting this like kind of enterprise technology. And I think the same thing is happening today, like with like basically everything that software companies have done, like kind of owning cloud compute, running software, and just having like all of these like deployed services. That is going to be in the hands of regular people in the future, just like the PC, just like iPhone. And I think like enabling that is like going to be the big wave of consumer AI.
Well, if you look at like, okay, right now in venture, you need $20 to $30 billion outcomes if you're investing in a company.
Yeah.
And then you go look at the market and you'll be like, what tech companies have those size of outcomes and those type of returns? They all have consumer features or start with a consumer product.
Totally.
Even Microsoft, right? Like even Microsoft, it was like an end operating system for a consumer.
Yeah.
And it was actually like Microsoft Excel that was like quick sheets.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And like that's probably one of the best like B2C product, even though like enterprises use it. And then like, you know, Meta is Facebook, and then Google the search engine itself is an individual, not a business.
Exactly.
And like they all moved into business enterprises, and then like Amazon sold books and sold things.
Exactly.
And so like literally like you could pick everything with like the biggest outcome, and it started with consumer.
Totally.
But it's really hard to pull off. And I just think it's so funny to me that no one's first principles, like looking at it like you look like you're like, you found an edge.
Yeah, it's so rare. Yeah. I think a big piece that's missing is like a lot of people are too attentive to like the now and not looking at like 20 years from now and like what the internet is going to feel like, what software and computers are going to feel like. And I think you really have to like do some drugs and like, just like go deep into like becoming a prophet. That's the way to like really figure out what to do right now.
What will, from your view, what will the internet and computers look like in like 20, 30 years?
Yeah. So one thing is I think like software, like websites and applications will look very like primitive in the future. Like this idea that there's like a static place that you go, that everybody sees the same version of it or like some stupid feed will just feel like crazy, like that this is how we were living. We're like living in squalor right now. And in the future, like we will like obviously like talk to our agents, but the places that we go will need to change. There will be these places that are like more dynamic where we get like personal media for ourselves, sometimes like generated with our agents. Sometimes we like interact with other people or other people's agents, and we can like kind of collaboratively work together on creating these like third places that today don't really exist. Maybe the third places have like migrated to like group chats or like Discords, but like those aren't the internet. Like the internet has this like property where it's like infinitely customizable. It's just like a blank canvas, and you can just like collaborate with people. And that's totally missing right now, but I think that will be a way that the internet works in the future.
It's super interesting because like Zuck, I think almost was too early on that because he probably had a similar thesis. And that's like literally why he like rebranded Facebook as Meta and like went really hard into like the third space. But it was like most of us as founders are usually too early. And like now I agree with you. Like I think for me, I'm like, it's going to be hyper customization. And like, you'll definitely want sovereignty over that because someone else will be customizing it for you with ulterior motives, or you could be like owning it and customizing it.
Yeah. Like there's one alternative future where like we are all in some like Meta owned metaverse. But that's not good. I don't want to like buy property on Meta's metaverse. I want to own my own property. And I want other people to come to it.
I guess, how do you think about sovereignty in the age of AI and like sovereignty with your own data? How does your product defend that for those that are into that sort of stuff?
Yeah. So this actually started from me and my co-founder, Rob. Rob is really goated. He's the first engineer at Substack. He built Substack. And, Substack also came from this idea of sovereignty. Like you should own your audience. Like you should own your subscribers. You should be able to export at any time. You should be able to do whatever you want with your subscriber list. And the same idea applies to like this bigger picture. Like you should own your data. It should live in your own server, and you should be able to build whatever you want and host it on your own server with your own data. And you should control who gets to access that, whether it's like the tools that you use or like the AIs that you talk to. They should interact with your own cloud. So everybody should have their own kind of like personal cloud, and we should have a bunch of clouds, and we should like interact with them. We should have like a social cloud or like various social groups that are in clouds of their own, and like a work cloud. So that's kind of like the future that I think actually was how the internet was intended to evolve, but it didn't evolve that way because of like the market.
How will you beat the market in this case?
Yeah. I think it's all about creating a new place to congregate, like a new internet. I think that's the only way, is to help people, help the world, like kind of like rapture style. Like we need to like enrapture people so that they can like kind of ascend to this like new place that is a new internet that's like more collectively owned, where like we can build our own services and like the real ways that we actually want as a civilization to interact with people, not as like a bunch of tech companies.
I think that's so interesting because if like AI is dropping the cost to build and dropping the cost of software, in theory, like you could have a lot of sovereign software.
Yeah, totally.
And then you have like, essentially if a bunch of people have that, then it creates a network and then it jumps the rails.
Exactly.
Which is like, I hadn't quite thought of it that way.
Yeah. And I think you actually don't need these like market forces of like subscriptions and advertising anymore.
No, death to SaaS, bro.
Yeah, exactly. SaaS needs to die, and people need to become their own service and SaaS providers. I think another really interesting thing that will happen in the future is like right now, like only like the big big token labs and also these like AI companies are like monetizing like token use.
Yeah.
But I think every individual will be able to monetize token use in the future as well. And that's one of the things that we're cooking with Zoe.
That's very cool. I think a lot of the foundational models are priced like they're monopolies, and they're not monopolies.
Yeah.
And Mercor just had a huge data hack.
Yeah.
Now that's just going to help open source models in China be even more accurate, right?
Yeah.
And then a new stat this week, this quarter, corporates are using open source models 64% of the time instead of like 10%. And that's a huge switch for corporates, right?
Totally, yeah.
Like how much are you on like open source models versus like the big mega models?
Yeah,
like what do you think is going to happen in the long term?
Totally. Yeah, most of our usage on Zoe is actually open source models, and they're much cheaper. They're just as good. And the frontier, obviously from like, Fable and these like big labs is always going to be like increasing, but will always be like kind of too expensive for the regular everyday consumer. So it's like very important to like bring the costs down for consumers to be able to use. And that just takes a lot of like optimizing like the product around kind of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And just like, tuning it, doing like automatic model selection and stuff like that. Because the consumer shouldn't have to think about like what model you're using. They don't care.
Yeah.
They just want to like get good results.
Yeah. So do you think like is your read that open source is going to kill all the big models, or like do you think there'll be like a multipolar world? Or
I think it'll be multipolar. I think like the top engineers at the big companies will use like the top expensive models, but everybody else, even at these companies, will like have to use these like cheaper variants.
And maybe it like also is like sort of the difference between like NASA needing a supercomputer versus like I just need like my Mac at home to like do some word processing. Like, I don't think anyone's like really started talking about that and how that's different.
Totally. Yeah. It's like if you just want like a daily news digest, don't use Fable for that.
Yeah. I talked to a lot of founders about this around how to like know who's really AI pilled from a coding perspective and to figure it all out. Like how much of your like AI generated code are you pushing into production? Because like you're a big like AI coding guy, and like how has that changed over time?
Yeah,
and love to hear sort of like what you do and like what I should look for with engineers too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so we started very early using these tools. We actually started with this tool called Aider, which was kind of like Claude Code before Claude Code, like in 2024. But basically using these tools when they're really janky and the models aren't so good, like teaches you kind of an intuition for just how to use the tools in general, even when they get better. So like back in the day, I had to like write out these like very like intense planning docs so that the AI could like kind of go autonomously for longer without me kind of like checking in on it. And I like kind of set up my harness in a particular way so that it could just like kind of keep going and fixing issues. And obviously the models are capable of just like doing that themselves now, but because I kind of like understand the process of like kind of good output and how it like really comes from like just solid ideas in the beginning and solid understanding of the way things work in the system, that's really informed a lot of how I work with like even Fable right now. Even though it can like one shot like crazy things, I'm still really like steering it a ton.
For me, because I've always been using this so long, I use like multi-sequential prompts to sort of like harness the model in a certain way. And I'm like, do all this, then do this, then do this, and then pretend like you're this. And then I've noticed, I'm like, okay, now I don't really need this one anymore. I can like back off of it because it's like quite good. Weirdly enough, like I've started getting back into coding as a CEO, and I'm not really a technical guy usually. Like I've been like the shittiest engineer ever. How important do you think it is for everyday people to start getting into building their own applications?
Super important. I think everybody can do it. My mom can do it. My mom is vibe coding up a storm. She was one of our first beta users like last summer.
That's so cool.
And she loves it. And I see tons of like older people like discovering that they can build a website or like update their website now. They can just like text their computer to update a website. So
is Squarespace and like Wix just like fucked?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, we have tons of people that come to us actually that like have replaced their Squarespace site with Zoe. And it's they overcharge you,
and Webflow, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
throw those guys in there.
I think Squarespace charges you like this like ridiculous amount every month just to like accept payments.
Dude, someone should make an inverse ETF of just all the old software companies that are like, like could just get one shot at.
Totally, I would invest.
Yeah, because I was like Jira and Atlassian, like and like all these things that are. Like what's your verdict on Salesforce? So like Salesforce is multiple to give you some red meat. It used to be like 20x free cash flow. Now it's like 15x free cash flow. It's like, my point is like, I think it's going to be like 3. I think it's going to trade more like a software utility. And I don't necessarily want to bet against them because like they have insane distribution moats. But where do you think like these old school SaaS companies are going?
They're trying to like preserve like their data and their like ontology as a moat. And I saw that Salesforce like a month ago, like went to like making it agentic, so like any agent can use Salesforce. That's really dangerous though, because like the agents, they want the data to be somewhere where they can really like work with it. They don't want it to be like in some other system. So the agents will just naturally like pull data as necessary into their own systems. And that really like, I think just will eat away at that moat that these like data companies essentially have. Basically like all of SaaS is about taking your data and selling it back to you, like holding it hostage and selling it back to you. People kind of feel this. And that's not a valid business anymore, I think.
That's all like sovereignty, right?
Yeah, totally.
And so like when and how do you think that breaks, and where do you think it breaks first?
I think that like the ergonomics of owning your own data, it's subtle, but it makes a big difference. Like over time, like as a company and as people who work at Zoho, like we've started like making ourselves the source of truth. Like, you know, for all of these tools that we used to use as a source of truth, we're just pulling it back into our system. And like once it's in your system, just everything changed. Like the forces of gravity change. And like the things that you can do like totally change. It's like less awkward. It takes less tokens to do things with that data versus like having it somewhere else.
Yeah. I've been talking a lot about like having all your data in one place is incredibly hard.
Totally.
We actually started a company that just does that.
Totally.
Not to like, I don't usually talk about that, but because it was like a whole thing where I'm like, how do we like get all the data in one place? Because it's actually quite hard to like maintain the connections and like pull it all in. And like, you know, because you're not going to like migrate off Slack.
Yeah.
I've been like wanting to go back to ICP. Like
totally. Yeah. We actually sometimes run IRC on our Zohos and have people like chatting with each other. It's super fun. And
so wait, I can get a Zoho and run like IRC on it again?
Totally.
Okay, I'm doing that like tonight because like I want to go IRC, baby.
Hell
like,
yeah.
There's a company I know that's like paying $1 million a year. Like it's a huge company, but they're paying like $1 million a year for Slack.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this is IRC with like some admin lockdowns.
Yeah, it's not even like Slack is a good interface. And another problem with like Slack is like, I don't think these tools are going to evolve properly for like the agent world.
No.
Like we have a lot of bots in our Slack, obviously. We have like Zoho all over our Slack. That's like fine. But like I'm kind of in those channels mostly to like talk to like the humans at work. And I've been like segregating the like bot channels into like other places because like I don't want to read slop all day. And I just don't think like structurally these like old messaging platforms are like designed for like working with agents.
So I guess we should get on Zoho and make an IRC.
Yeah, actually, we're building a messaging app.
Oh, tight. Okay, I'll beta test that with my company.
Hell yeah.
Like I've been like sharpening this axe for like 10 years, or not less than 10 years. It's like Slack's driven me crazy.
Yeah.
So Slack is basically IRC locked down with your data. Like a lot of founders and I, we've been building on Slack, and they're starting to like lock down your data, and it's a big risk for building agentically. Can you tell me a bit about how like IRC used to be like the open source part of the internet and like what even that is, and then how in Slack's use case they've like really like co-opted that and then lock it down?
Yeah, so IRC was one of the first kind of like internet messaging platforms or protocols, and the beauty of it is it's like totally peer-to-peer. You just run it on your server on your computer, and you connect to these like channels, and you can just like talk directly with people. Like when I like send a message to you on IRC, it goes from my server to your server. No platform, nobody in between. And like that's how the internet was designed. It was like full of like nice little protocols like this. And now like obviously that was like a little bit hard to use. It was like janky. So like these like platforms evolved. Mostly it was because it was like kind of hard for regular people to like build the software around it. But like now we're totally capable of like building our own ways to communicate with each other, and kind of like bring it back to that like old school, more like intimate form of communication with like nobody's going to snoop on our data if we're like just talking over IRC.
I guess, are you a tech libertarian then? Because you're like about data sovereignty?
In a sense, yeah. I mean, I'm all about burning down the house. You know, the house is bad. We got to move out of this house.
It's interesting that you feel that way, and like you've made a ton of money at like really huge tech companies.
Yeah.
And you feel that way.
Yeah.
Can you like tell us a bit more about that? Like why?
Totally. Yeah.
Because like some would think like it's like, okay, like you've done well at like some really notable tech companies. Like, you know, like hasn't that system served you well?
It has for me well. I'd say that like Stripe is a very like idealistic tech company in a lot of ways. Just like building infrastructure for like people to like make money on the internet. And I think I've always tried to work at like kind of pretty like mission aligned companies. Venmo also felt like that, just like making it easier to transact in a kind of like social way. It's always been important for me to just like be in tech because I want to like build for the builders, to build for people that kind of really want to do something with themselves on the internet. And that's always been kind of like the thing that drives me, is like the joy of watching somebody's eyes light up when like they tell me about like kind of what they've built on the thing that I made. Yeah.
That's so cool. I guess, where do we go from here? Like, how do I, if I'm like, just like, how did you get your mom started to use your company? Like, if I want to start coding, or I want to start using Zoe, or like, I want to have my own personal space on the internet. Like, what's the stack you use? What would you recommend as like a first project? Like, how, like, you're at zero and you want to try something. Like, what do you do?
Yeah. Well, first sign up for Zoe. But then after that, like,
I swear we're not being sponsored.
just like start small. I think that's really the key. Like with my mom, I started her on these workflows that she needed for work. Like she reads a lot of papers. She's a biologist. She's like always just like scouring the internet, like keeping track of like what new things are coming out in her field. And I was like, you can totally set up like automations to do that. You can like store all of your papers that you're reading on your Zoe. And then you can just like text your Zoe to like learn more about a paper, to study something. So she does this all the time. She's like at the doctor's office and she's like texting her Zoe to like learn about like whatever the topic she's researching. And it's really transformed like just how she does research. And now she's also going further than that. She's never been able to code, but like people in her lab, like her students, will like kind of write code. And now she can kind of like run those data analyses herself and like kind of like discover things. It's like something she's always wanted to do as kind of like the director of an institution of a lab, is to just really like dig into the data herself. And it's been transformational. And now she's just like vibe coding stuff. She has like a personal website. It's amazing. But like start small with like the thing that you do every day.
And then like how much time should people put into it, and like what, like how do you get better at it?
Yeah. I mean, I think just like it starts from just like finding what sparks you. And you'll just inherently want to spend more time on the things that like kind of feel exciting to you. And just like follow your like intuition and your excitement. I think that's all it takes.
What do you think are competing forces to like personal sovereignty with AI?
Yeah. I mean, obviously the big labs, obviously big tech, obviously like what people see on social media. I think the best force we have is just like this feeling of like dissatisfaction, this feeling of like nostalgia for the past. Even like Gen Z kids, you can sense it from them. Even though they like weren't raised with like the old internet, they still have this like desire to like break out of like the current technology cycle. You see this with like them like unplugging from things, from like building cyber decks. They also desire a better world. It's like different because it's not like our kind of like old boomer nostalgia, but they also want something else. They also feel that it's not good. So I think it starts from there.
What's a cyber deck?
Yeah, you should look it up. It's this trend right now. It's very popular. People are like building these like little mini computers for themselves. They're very cute. They're very personalized. You can like get a Raspberry Pi or something and like build your own like enclosure for it. So people are trying to like reimagine like what computing can feel like.
Why?
Sorry,
why do you?
One second. A little too zinned up here.
Do you need water? Are you good?
Can I use the bathroom?
Yeah, go for it. I shouldn't have goaded him into doing double zins. Dude, so you went viral for writing for basically having a $9,000 cursor bill.
Yeah.
And I think that there's like a lot of debate online and like tech communities and stuff like that around like huge AI bills versus not. How do you measure like what you're building is basically effective?
Yeah, so this was way back. Actually, when the models were way cheaper. This is like April or May. So it was like pretty notable to spend like $9,000. You can spend like $9,000 easily these days. But yeah, when you're building something from the ground up, it just takes a lot of code. So you have to spend to do it. And like $9,000 a month is like nothing compared to like hiring another engineer. And yeah, I think at the time it made total sense and still does.
Yeah. So what does like velocity coding on like a Tuesday like look like? Like, could you spell it out for the audience? Because I think that's something people, both engineers and founders, are really interested in. Yeah,
totally. So yesterday was my Fable day. The day before when it was released, I didn't have much time, but I was like, I'm going to lock in and really use this thing. Because I kind of felt it the day it was released, that there's like just a different vibe. Like it went from something that like I kind of don't trust, something that I like kind of respect. And yeah, for me, it was just like, sat down, locked in for like 12 hours. I was doing like, 10 tasks at a time, like pretty large tasks that like I knew that I wouldn't have been able to do as easily before, but I could just like kind of like do in parallel. So for me, it's all about like kind of parallelization, like how much can you do simultaneously? Yeah.
So like, what does that look like? Like, are you physically writing code, or do you have like X number of agents writing code? Do you have agents that are QAing agents? Like, what's sort of your stack, and what does that look like?
Yeah, a bunch of things. We have a lot of skills inside of our code base. We're very kind of agent forward with just kind of how our code base works. So yeah, that lets me kind of spin off all of these different tasks with different agents. Sometimes I use Zoe actually to because Zoe, I guess, understands itself really well. So Zoe is able to do certain tasks better than I could, kind of outside of Zoe. But I also have a lot of different things running, because of the whole Claude kind of discount on Fable until the 22nd. I've just been using a lot of Claude these days to really milk that, using multiple Claude subscriptions in case I get kind of rate limited. Yeah, so I think it's all about finding that alpha in terms of where the best tokens are and using those tokens productively and efficiently.
How do you know when basically Claude is fucking with their compute or changing, dumbing down their product for you? Because that's something that's also been controversial as well.
Totally.
I guess getting iPhoned.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can sense it. I try all sorts of things. That's why I have multiple subscriptions to Claude.
Do you think they throttle it by the user level?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely do.
So how do you get around it? Multiple subscriptions?
Yeah.
That's do you do VPNs or
No, I just do multiple subs. It seems to work fine.
And then it's so what, do you think they're throttling people after they've used it X amount of time, whereas a new user, they want them to have a lot of delight?
Totally. You definitely if you're really going ham, you hit your limits pretty quickly. So it's necessary to kind of rotate between accounts if you're really kind of token maxing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's token maxing?
Yeah, token maxing is trying to use as many tokens as you can productively. And I think it actually, if you trust yourself, if you know what you're doing, and if the code is kind of well set up, you can really token max these days. And I think a lot of people don't see this yet, and people don't kind of understand that when you really do know what you're doing, it is absolutely transformational how much you can do at once right now.
So what does that look like?
Yeah, I think yesterday I spent $500 on tokens. For me, that's token maxing is when I'm kind of at that frontier of use. That's about my peak usage.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Gary Tan, he basically said that a lot of people could put an OpenClaw mixed with Hermes, and then put he has an online I don't know, a Gary brain or something, and he has a Git that's public and available. Do you have any sort of rig with OpenClaw, and are you doing anything in that way, or are you just more on the coding end?
Yeah, with Zoe. So Zoe is kind of the original OpenClaw. And I have a very similar kind of setup with Zoe where Zoe understands itself. Zoe has her code base. So knows what's going on. It kind of analyzes all of the code activity and summarizes it for me. And I can kind of reference that for new work that I'm doing. I can always find the last kind of piece that touched this code and find the Slack conversations and give myself and my agent all the context I need to start a new piece of work.
Very cool. So you said that you were dying for me to ask this question. Where did the name Zoe come from, and why is your logo a Pegasus?
Yeah, good question. So the word Zoe, it's the Greek root for living thing. So zoology, zooplankton. So Zoe computer is a living computer, and Steve Jobs, he called the computer a bicycle for the mind. So a living bicycle is a horse, obviously. A living computer in the cloud is a Pegasus.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm Greek, so I like that.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So, you mentioned before that you were first before OpenClaw.
Yeah.
And now OpenClaw is purchased by OpenAI, and they're potentially going after personal agents. What happens to Zoe, and how do you counterposition against the world's biggest lab going against personal agents? And is that the best thing that's ever happened to Zoe, or is that scary as hell?
Yeah, it's a really good thing for us. So we started building Zoe first lines of code in April last year, so quite a long time before people kind of woke up to the idea of giving an agent a computer. OpenClaw actually got started after our big launch in November. Peter Steinberg actually was posting about us and how we were missing some features. So it made sense to build the open source version of Zoe. And I kind of saw that code base called Claudebot get started right after we launched. And I was just watching it from far. I was this is pretty interesting. I didn't expect it to go as viral as it did, but it's been a really good kind of market tailwind for us, because now everybody normies have heard of OpenClaw. So I have a reference point for talking to people about what Zoe is. People have woken up to the idea and really understand it now. Whereas last year was kind of hard to tell people why this is important.
Yeah. Like you're definitely like a pioneer in the consumer AI space. Why didn't you make Zoe open source? And like, why did you, like, you probably at some point were deciding like, is this open source as a project or is this going to be like a company? And like, how did you and your founder think about that for like other people that are out there? And then like, why did you make the decision?
Yeah, totally. I think like monetizing open source is really hard. Always has been. Like commercial open source is really tricky. Usually that leads you to like an enterprisey outcome where like you're licensing your software or like some special version of your software that only enterprises get.
Yeah.
But I don't think it can really work for consumer. It's like really hard to make open source software work for consumers. Because it's just like, it's tricky to set it up. You see this with OpenClaw, like it's a really fast moving project. People like building with OpenClaw just have to like fix it all the time. It's like breaking their workflows. And that's just the thing about open source. If like you make the consumer kind of like manage all of this stuff that they have to think about, I don't think that's the right way to like build a consumer brand.
Yeah. So like OpenClaw now is going into Microsoft and their distribution. So like Microsoft is in theory, I don't know, they have like 10,000, I guess, assistants or AI. Like they have Microsoft has like infinite amounts of assistants and things. So like, what do you think Microsoft's trying to do with that? Or like, are they getting into like the personal agent space, but for businesses, obviously? Like, and do you think it'll be successful? Like, are you betting against that? Like, like what do you think's going to happen with OpenClaw?
Yeah, totally. Lots of interesting stuff from Microsoft, like making their kind of OS agentic. You can see this with Apple too, like, and what they're doing with Siri. I think like eventually all of these operating systems of the past will like have to expose everything in a new way to like agents. Like they were kind of exposed to like software, like old school traditional software, but now they have to kind of like reinvent themselves and like make all of these kind of like aspects of their OS like kind of available to agents. And I think that's a really good thing. I think like it's really amazing to like enable people to like kind of work with their OS in this like deeper way. And I'm frankly just really excited about it.
Yeah. Do you think like hardware, the next phase of hardware, like it's rumored OpenAI to have the device, the little silver thing, like Apple's changing the way they're thinking about stuff. Like, do you think the hardware will change and then the consumer interaction will change with personal agents? Or like, does it all drive the same? And how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, totally. I think like hardware is definitely going to be a big piece of the future. I think like the way that we interact with the internet and our software is very much like kind of like using these UIs. And in the future, like it'll be much more just like talking to a friend. And I think that's really exciting. I think like a lot of like our tooling will move more towards like messaging, and even working with your OS will feel like messaging. Working with hardware that you have, like personal devices, should feel more like talking. So yeah, I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, I love that. I think it could empower me to get off the computer and like out into the world, right? Totally. And like have good interactions like this.
Totally.
So like on Twitter and on all the founder circles, people have been talking about 996. I've had founders on here that are like, fuck that. You need to have balance. You know, like you've talked and said that you were up to like you're up 12 hours yesterday or longer or something, some crazy amount. Like what's your view on 996 and like grind and like how does that impact your coding?
Yeah. I think when it comes to like working with agents, it has to be 12 a.m. to 12 a.m., 7 days a week. Like I think your agents have to be running at that rate to really like token max. Obviously you don't have to be there all the time, and it's all about setting up the system so you don't have to be there, and like you can still have work-life balance, but you have to like kind of like kick stuff off or like review stuff and just kind of like keep the train moving. And that's kind of how I think about 996. I think like when it comes to like hustle culture or like grinding, like I don't really aspire to that or like believe in that. But I do think like kind of making sure that your agents are grinding all the time is super important.
How do you do that? Do you like keep them up like on your mobile device? Do you like just as you're out and about, you like keep them cruising?
Yeah. When I'm like waiting for like boarding my flight or like on the train, I'm always talking to an agent.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How do you feel like that cuts against your ability to be present? Because like your dream is like be present, right?
Yeah, obviously. So I think like when I'm gonna go off to sleep or like go out to dinner, I always make sure that I start something at least on my laptop. Or like by texting an agent.
And then you just like your phone away so you can like have that moment and have that stuff.
That's right. Yeah.
Very cool. Last question. Year or two from now, what needs to be true about Zoe? Or you feel like people need to have and see to have personal agents and to have like the vibe of the internet come back, but for like AI?
Yeah. So I think it starts from messaging, actually, which is very different from what Zoho looks like today. It's like a very like single player, like I'm in my cloud computer kind of experience. But we're working on like a way for people to message each other and to like form these like kind of like group servers and like kind of build together. So I think like multiplayer is going to be a big part of the future and what we want to enable, because that's kind of like the beauty of the internet and like forums and like kind of the old internet is like it was multiplayer, but it's also intimate. And we felt like we collectively owned the space.
Yeah. I felt like there was a lot more freedom.
Yeah.
And there was definitely a lot more like authenticity.
Yeah.
And totally. So, yeah, like on that, thank you for coming on the podcast and super excited about Zoho. Where can people find you? Where can people find Zoho?
Yeah, so zoho.computer is our website. And you can find me on Twitter and on LinkedIn. I post on those platforms a lot these days.
Killer.
Yeah.
All right, check you out there. And thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.